Watch what's approaching, the supreme moment. Reality striking closer than it seems, don't it? Go ahead, it's for the taking if you want it. If not, the dream dies and you'll be forever haunted. Then confront it.
What's good? So today we're going to test out the free-to-play physical type Super Saiyan Future Gohan unit. I feel like the most appropriate location to test this guy out in terms of Super Battle Road is probably the monotype stages. Honestly, the newer ones he's definitely going to struggle with. And I think in terms of a relevancy standpoint, I think it's really meant for free-to-play or newer type players that are lacking units to potentially use this guy on the SBR stages. So because of that, we're going to test it out on the super physical type versus the extreme intelligence type enemies. So let's go ahead and see how this guy does. But outside of that, let's just cover the stats briefly because I don't know, maybe you guys have just joined the channel and checking the content out, but just in case, we'll go ahead and cover the stats for this card. So leader skills, all type key plus 2 HP attack and defense increase of 30%. Super attack has the ability to raise attack and defense for 1 turn and causes supreme damage to enemy because of that. And really, I kind of tested this unit meant for Super Battle Road. I ended up giving this guy level 14 additional attack and level 12 criticals. Now for the passive skill, it's an attack and defense increase of 70% plus an additional key plus 2. An attack defense increase of 50% when facing 2 or more enemies. And then a high chance of performing a critical hit when there's an androids category enemy. So because Super Battle Road stages are always going to be more than 2 enemies, this is probably the best place to test this guy out for the full passive skill basically setup. And on top of that, you do face android category enemies occasionally in the Super Battle Road setup, so you'll be able to see the full effect of this guy. Links aren't terrible. I mean, he's got Golden Warrior, that's plus 1 key enemies, defense minus 2,000, Super Saiyan 10% to attack. All in the family is also defense increase of 15%, experienced fighters 10% to attack. Cold Judgment is 20% to defense, and then Kamehameha 2500 to attack when SA is launched. And finally, Dismal Future is plus 1 key. And I mean, this guy falls into quite a bit of categories. I'm not going to go into all the details for it, but you know, because this is a super physical type team setting, I don't really feel the need to cover the rest of the details. But you know, understand this is a max level 100 unit, so even in terms of free to play, there are plenty of better options, I'm sure. But it's always, you know, good to test out certain units on certain settings just to see how they are, just to provide you really with just a little bit more options, I guess, in a way. So that's pretty much what we're doing right now. And yeah, I mean, he can definitely take a decent amount of hits, but with a super attack from the enemy, you're going to be getting hit for a pretty decent amount though at the same time. So, you know, he can certainly defend well to a certain degree, but again, this is more or less if you're out of options and you're still struggling to beat the event, this might be potentially a good unit to, you know, include on a team and try and clear it. So again, at this point, I think a lot of you guys that are watching, for the most part, you've already cleared the monotype stages for Super Battle Road, and pretty much, you know, either working on or already cleared the category stage as well. So this is more or less just testing out the unit and seeing how he does. That's purely what this is for. Mainly because, again, the passive skill, you really get that boost of 70% toward attack and defense when you're facing 2 or more enemies. Most Dokkan events, you're typically facing only 1 enemy, so it really does kind of restrict it a little bit. But in terms of Battle Road, you're guaranteed to be facing more than 2, so that's kind of why it works out in this setting. We're actually going to put him in spots where a lot of the hits are coming, just since we are testing the unit out in terms of both the attack and defensive ability. So that's kind of why he's placed in a certain area. Again, by the way, I didn't clarify. This is the 120% lead from the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, and then the friend lead is the LR Gogeta unit. So it's 90% for physical type units. So keep that in mind. It's not a full, you know, 120% double lead setting. So you are losing a certain percentage just, you know, from a secondary leader, but it kind of helps having LR Gogeta, obviously, but that's kind of how, in terms of leader skill settings, that's how it's set up. So do keep that in mind. I do have to say, the Super Saiyan Goku unit that did get an EZA in JP, global players, this guy is phenomenal after the Extreme Z Awakening. It's, you know, built-in stun, built-in crits. This guy is the overall package, and he's going to help out quite a bit in the Super Battle Road setup. Especially considering there are quite a few stages this guy comes in handy and applicable in terms of running on a team. So once that EZA comes to global, you guys are going to have fun. I mean, honestly, this guy really isn't a bad choice in terms of potentially using on a team for the monotype battle road settings. Again, I think in the newer stages, like even Hybrid Saiyans or whatever, this Future Saga is another one that was introduced in JP recently, but yeah, this guy is probably going to struggle in those settings. I mean, I just feel like he's going to take too much of a hit, even if he gets that, you know, full, 70% plus a 50%, so 120% total for attack and defense. I think he's still going to struggle against, you know, the much tougher enemies. So I would be a little bit wary on that. I think in terms of practical standpoint, he's really probably most useful in this type of setting where you're going through the monotype battle road stages. So that's my opinion on it. But you know, I mean, if you already tested it on the category stages, let me know. Let me know how you did. Trying to figure out what to go with here, you know what I mean? Like, the drawback with the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks unit is really the defensive abilities. Unless you get the 11 key, that unit becomes a little bit of a liability, especially in this type of setting where, you know, the enemy tends to hit a little bit more than some of the Dokkan events. Let's be honest, the Dokkan events are a lot easier than they used to be. So yeah, I mean, it probably was the right decision to do that because the enemy's super there, and Gotenks definitely would have taken a lot of damage there. But he was able to get the 11 key on that one. But if he was in the first slot, the way the orbs were set up on the field, he wouldn't have been able to do that. Of course, you'll see rotations with the EZA physical type Super Saiyan Trunks. Pretty good support as well. I think it was 30% toward attack and defense with the passive, also +2 key, and then another 30% toward attack if the Trunks unit supers. So you're probably not going to see that unit in the first or second slot helping the Gohan unit's attack output, but you know, the passive at least does help. So that's probably the takeaway for that one. Alright, so we do have Buu, Majin Buu, and Babidi unit. And unfortunately, it's not an Android type enemy, so you're not going to see that guaranteed crit. But it is two enemies at this point, so you'll see that additional +2 key and attack and defense increase of 50%. So you know, that'll definitely help in terms of both offense and defense for this guy. Looks like none of these guys link, but definitely want the Dokkan mode attack for Gohan just to see how he does. I mean, this is really just a test for this guy, so you know, can't give it to anyone else. I wouldn't really expect a whole lot of damage, even with the Dokkan mode attack. Honestly, he's a modest unit, and that's probably the extent to it. You know what I mean? Like he's a decent unit. He's a decent and modest unit, but he's not either terrible or fantastic. You know, he's kind of somewhere in between. I mean, yes, I mean 700,000 without the crit, and that was a Dokkan mode attack. Obviously, there wasn't a whole lot of links active in the rotation, so he could have definitely performed a little bit better had he had some better linking buddies. But you know, it is what it is. So slowly but surely we're getting through the rounds. It's definitely taking a little bit longer, but obviously because of some of the inclusion of certain units, it does tend to drag things out a little bit. I did bring in the LR Great Saiyan unit just because of the defensive boost that the unit provides for the rest of the team, as well as the MVP 17 unit. In this setting, initially I was going into this, I pretty much assumed Gohan would probably need as much defensive help as he can get. So really kind of focused a little bit more on the defensive side than the attack portion of it. And I think honestly balance is key, and defense is sometimes your best offense, you know what I mean? So that's pretty much the mentality of going into it. Just making sure everybody kind of works decent together and pretty much going about it that way. The tech version of the Gotenks unit did get an easy A. I wonder when the physical type version, well, I guess it's 120% monotype leads, so whenever those roll out after the 70% leads and 100% leads are completed, I'm guessing that's, that'll definitely be the next step. It'll be a while for now. It'll probably at least be like 12 months out until that happens. I feel like they're going to take their sweet time with that, but, speaking of that, that would be very nice. It's actually really nice to think about if you take a minute and reflect back on it, because you've got Super Saiyan 3 Angel Goku, you've got like Super 17, you have Final Form Cooler, Kid Buu, all those guys. And if you think about a potential easy A for those units, I mean it kind of gets you excited a little bit. It's crazy. I mean, a lot of those guys are still good. Even today. So when they get at easy A, it's going to be ridiculous, I think. Probably out of the bunch, the ones that need it the most is obviously Super Saiyan 3 Broly, and then even like the Strength Janemba. I don't even know if anybody runs that unit now, especially since the easy A for the Intelligence version is out for both JP and Global. I only run the Strength version on Battlefield. That's really much it. Outside of that, the Intelligence version is just miles better. So we'll see what happens eventually with that. But back to the future Gohan unit. It's a decent free-to-play unit. It's max level 100. I don't know if they'll actually give this guy another awakening to TUR status, but maybe eventually, maybe like next year. It's similar to the Gohan unit from the Bojack story event. Eventually these guys might get another improvement, but we'll see what happens, But yeah, this is pretty much it. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. Yeah, this is the testing of the free-to-play Super Saiyan Future Trunks, so hopefully you enjoyed the video, as always.